Imagine being kicked out of your house at 16, abandoned by your own mother, and still managing to build a successful life against all odds. Now, think of that same person who left you behind, coming back years later, not to apologize, but to demand that you pay for the college of the children she chose to prioritize. This is the story of a woman who faced abandonment, betrayal, and manipulation, but in the end, found the strength to say no and move on. If you've ever felt betrayed by someone who was supposed to protect you, this story will make you reflect on the true meaning of family and boundaries. Get ready, because this journey is intense. Laura never imagined that the place that was supposed to be her safe haven would become the scene of her greatest rejection. At 16, she already felt the weight of the world on her shoulders, but nothing prepared her for the day her own mother, Carla, kicked her out of the house. The justification: "We don't have space or money for you anymore. We need to focus on the twins." The twins, Peter and Paula, were the new focus of the family. Born 2 years prior, they quickly became the center of Carla and her stepfather Richard's attention. Laura, who already felt out of place since her mother's remarriage, was now treated as a burden. Family dinners, which used to be moments of unity, were now filled with disapproving looks and passive-aggressive comments. "Laura, you're almost an adult. You need to learn to fend for yourself," Carla would say, while serving generous portions to the twins. The breaking point came on a cold winter night. Laura came home from school and found her bags packed in the living room. "What's going on?" she asked, her throat tightening. Carla, without looking her daughter in the eye, replied, "You're going to live with your grandparents. Richard and I decided it's for the best. The twins need more attention, and we can't afford to support 3 kids." Laura felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. "Support 3 kids? I've been working since I was 14. I pay for my own things," she shouted, trying to hold back tears. But Carla was relentless. "Don't argue with me, Laura. You're leaving for your grandparents' house tomorrow." They already know. That night, Laura barely slept. She looked at the old photos in her room, reminiscing about the days when Carla was a caring and present mother. "What did I do wrong?" she asked the void, receiving no answer. The next day, Laura grabbed her bags and went to her grandparents' house. The bus ride was long and lonely. She felt a mix of anger, sadness, and fear. "What if my grandparents don't want me either?" she thought, gripping the strap of her backpack tightly. Fortunately, her grandparents, Maria and Jose, welcomed her with open arms. "You'll always have a place here, sweetheart," Maria said, hugging her tightly. But Laura knew life wouldn't be easy. Her grandparents were already struggling financially, and now they had another mouth to feed. In the following months, Laura adapted to her new reality. She continued working as a cashier at a diner, earning $800 a month, and used part of the money to help with household expenses. School took a back seat, but she worked hard to keep her grades up. "I won't let this break me," she repeated to herself, like a mantra. But the emotional scars ran deep. Laura felt betrayed and abandoned. She saw photos of Carla and the twins on social media, smiling during outings and celebrations, and wondered why she was no longer worthy of being part of that family. "I'm her daughter too," she whispered, her heart heavy. Slowly, Laura began to understand that sometimes family isn't about blood, but about who stands by you in your hardest moments. Her grandparents became her safe haven, and she vowed to herself that one day she would do something great to repay the love they had shown her. Life at her grandparents' house wasn't easy, but Laura was determined not to be a burden. She woke up at 5 a.m., helped Maria prepare breakfast, and then took the bus to work. As a cashier at a diner, she earned $800 a month, barely enough to cover her personal expense ES. But she made sure to contribute $800 a month, barely enough to cover her personal expense S. But she made sure to contribute $200 to the household bills. "I don't want my grandparents to feel overwhelmed because of me," she told herself. The work was exhausting. Laura spent hours on her feet, serving customers, cleaning tables, and dealing with the stress of a busy environment. But she didn't complain. "At least I'm earning my own money," she thought, counting down the hours until her shift ended. The worst part was coming home exhausted and still having to study for school exams. Her eyes burned with fatigue, but she knew she couldn't give up. Education is my only way out of this life, she repeated, like a mantra. At school, Laura was a dedicated student, but the constant exhaustion began to affect her performance. Once, she fell asleep during a math class and was scolded by the teacher. Laura, you need to take care of yourself. It's no use working yourself to death if you're not well enough to study, the teacher said with a look of concern. Laura just nodded and promised to try harder, but deep down, she knew she had no choice. Working and studying were her only options. Her grandparents did their best to support her. Maria always left a warm plate of food for her, even when she came home late from work. Jose, though not very affectionate, always asked how her day had been. "You're a warrior, my granddaughter," he said, with a rare smile. These small gestures of love were what kept Laura going on the hardest days, but the financial pressure was constant. One month, the refrigerator broke, and her grandparents didn't have the money to fix it. Laura used part of her savings to help, but that meant she couldn't buy the book she needed for the semester. I'll have to study online, she thought, frustrated. The lack of resources felt like an insurmountable obstacle. Despite the difficulties, Laura never lost sight of her dreams. She wanted to study business administration at a public university and, one day, have a successful career. I'll prove to everyone that I'm capable, she said, filling out scholarship applications and financial aid forms. But every no she received was a blow to her self-esteem. The hardest moment was when she was accepted into a prestigious university in another city, but had to turn down the offer because she couldn't afford the housing costs. I have no choice, she said, crying in Maria's arms. I can't leave my grandparents alone, and I don't have the money to move. It was one of the saddest days of her life, but also the day she realized she needed to be even stronger. Laura decided to enroll in a public college in her own city, where she could continue living with her grandparents. The program wasn't what she had dreamed of, but it was an opportunity. I'll make it work, she promised herself, and little by little, she began to rebuild her confidence. By 18, Laura had already learned lessons that many people only learn in adulthood. She knew the world wasn't fair, but she also knew that resilience was her greatest weapon. I won't let anything break me, she thought, walking to work on yet another day of struggle. Laura looked at the diploma in her hands and felt a wave of pride that made her forget for a moment all the sleepless nights, the tears shed, and the sacrifices she had made to get there. She had graduated with a degree in business administration, and although the program wasn't at a prestigious university, she knew that every line on that paper represented hours of dedication and perseverance. I did it, she whispered, holding the diploma like a treasure. But Laura knew that graduation was just the beginning. Now she needed to find a job that would allow her to build the life she had always dreamed of. Sending out resumes became her new routine. She spent hours in front of the computer, tailoring each application to the job postings she found. I can't afford to be rejected, she thought, clicking send once again. The first interviews were disheartening. Many recruiters seemed skeptical about her limited experience and the university she had attended. You have potential, but we're looking for someone with more experience, they would say. With a polite smile, Laura left those meetings with a heavy heart, but always found the strength to try again. I won't give up, she told herself, reviewing her answers and practicing for the next interview. Finally, after months of trying, Laura landed an opportunity at a small consulting firm. The starting salary was modest, $2,500 a month, but she saw it as an important step in her career. I'll show them what I'm capable of, she promised herself on her first day of work. In the following months, Laura worked harder than ever. She arrived early, left late, and always volunteered for the most challenging projects. Her colleagues quickly noticed that she was someone who went above and beyond to deliver results. Laura, you're unstoppable, a coworker said, impressed by her dedication. She just smiled, knowing that every extra hour was an investment in her future. Gradually, her work began to catch the attention of her superiors. One day, the company's manager called her into a meeting. Laura, we've been impressed with your performance. We'd like you to lead a new project, he said, with an approving smile. She could hardly believe it. I won't let you down, she replied with determination. The project was a success, and Laura began to gain visibility within the company. Her promotion to senior analyst came less than 2 years later, with a salary increase to $4,000 a month. I'm on the right track, she thought, signing the promotion contract. But she knew there was still much to achieve. With her new salary, Laura finally achieved one of her biggest dreams, buying her own apartment. The place was small, but it was hers. I'll never depend on anyone again, she said, decorating the space with simple but carefully chosen furniture. The feeling of independence was liberating, but instead of letting it bring her down, Laura used that pain as fuel. I'll prove to myself that I can succeed, with or without them, she decided. And with that determination, she continued to climb the career ladder, one step at a time. Laura was in her apartment, enjoying a rare moment of peace after a long day at work, when her phone rang. She looked at the screen and saw an unknown number. Hesitant, she answered. Hello? Laura, it's your mother. Carla's voice was soft, almost sweet, but Laura felt a chill run down her spine. It had been years since they last spoke, and the last time they saw each other was the day Laura was kicked out of the house. What do you want? Laura asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Carla took a deep breath before responding. I know we haven't talked, but I needed to reach out. I need your help. Laura felt a knot form in her stomach. Help with what? She asked, already suspecting the answer. Peter and Paula got accepted into a private university, but we can't afford the tuition. I thought that, since you're doing well, maybe you could help us. The audacity of the request left Laura speechless for a moment. Are you kidding me? She finally replied, anger beginning to boil inside her. Laura, please. I know I wasn't the best mother, but they're your siblings. You can't leave them helpless. Carla's voice trembled, but Laura wasn't moved. Helpless? Are you serious? Who left me helpless? You kicked me out of the house, remember? And now you're asking for money for the kids you chose to prioritize? Carla tried to argue, but Laura cut her off. No, Carla. I don't owe you or them anything. You made your choice years ago, and now you'll have to deal with the consequences. She hung up the phone, her hands shaking with anger and frustration. But Carla didn't give up so easily. In the following days, Laura began receiving emotional messages and emails, filled with justifications and pleas. I was young and didn't know what I was doing. Carla wrote in one of the emails, You're my daughter, and I'll always love you. Please think about your siblings. Laura read the messages with a mix of anger and sadness. Part of her wanted to believe that Carla was remorseful, but another part knew it was just another attempt at manipulation. She's only interested in my money, she thought, deleting the emails without responding. The situation reached a breaking point when Carla showed up at Laura's workplace. She was leaving the office when she saw her mother waiting outside. What are you doing here? Laura asked, trying to stay calm. I needed to talk to you in person, Carla replied, tears in her eyes. Please, Laura, I have nowhere else to turn. People around them began to stare, and Laura felt embarrassment take over. You have no right to come here and put me in this situation, she said, her voice low but firm. I'm not giving you money, and if you keep harassing me, I'll take legal action. Carla tried to argue, but Laura cut her off again. Enough, Carla. I don't want any more contact with you. Please, leave. She turned her back and walked into the building, her heart racing. It was the first time she had truly stood up to her mother, and though it was hard, she knew it was necessary. That night, Laura called her grandparents to tell them what had happened. You did the right thing, sweetheart, Maria said, her voice filled with emotion. No one has the right to demand anything from you after everything you've been through. Laura knew her grandparents were right, but the situation still left her emotionally drained. She sat on the couch, staring at the ceiling, and wondered if she would ever be able to forgive Carla. Maybe one day, she thought, but not today. After the confrontation at work, Laura hoped that Carla would finally understand that there was no room for reconciliation or financial requests. But to her surprise, her mother didn't give up. Instead, Carla intensified her attempts to contact Laura, using increasingly manipulative tactics. The emails kept coming, but now with a more dramatic tone. You're my only hope, Laura. If you don't help, your siblings will lose their chance at a better future, Carla wrote in one message. In another, she tried to appeal to guilt. I know I failed you, but don't let my mistakes affect Peter and Paula's future. They're not to blame for what happened. Laura read the messages with a mix of anger and sadness. Part of her wanted to believe that Carla was genuinely remorseful, but another part knew it was just a ploy to get what she wanted. She hasn't changed, Laura thought, deleting another email without responding. But Carla didn't limit herself to electronic messages. She started calling Laura's cell phone at inappropriate hours, leaving emotional voicemails. Please, Laura, I'm desperate. If you don't help, I don't know what I'll do. Carla's voice trembled, but Laura wasn't moved. She's trying to manipulate me, she thought, blocking her mother's number. The situation became even more tense when Carla began sending letters by mail. The letters were long and full of justifications, but the content was always the same. Help your siblings. Laura read each word with a knot in her stomach, but refused to give in. I won't let her control me, she told herself, tearing up the letters and throwing them in the trash. But the last straw was when Carla showed up in front of Laura's apartment building. She was leaving for work when she saw her mother waiting on the sidewalk. What are you doing here? Laura asked, trying to stay calm. I needed to see you, Carla replied, tears in her eyes. Please, Laura, I have nowhere else to turn. People around them began to stare, and Laura felt embarrassment take over. You have no right to come here and put me in this situation, she said, her voice low but firm. I'm not giving you money, and if you keep harassing me, I'll take legal action. Carla tried to argue, but Laura cut her off again. Enough, Carla. I don't want any more contact with you. Please leave. She turned her back and walked into the building, her heart racing. It was the first time she had truly stood up to her mother, and though it was hard, she knew it was necessary. That night, Laura called her grandparents to tell them what had happened. You did the right thing, sweetheart, Maria said, her voice filled with emotion. No one has the right to demand anything from you after everything you've been through. Laura knew her grandparents were right, but the situation still left her emotionally drained. She sat on the couch, staring at the ceiling, and wondered if she would ever be able to forgive Carla. Maybe one day, she thought, but not today. Laura thought that, after blocking Carla and ignoring her attempts at contact, her mother would finally give up. But she underestimated Carla's persistence. One night, as Laura relaxed in her apartment after a long day at work, the doorbell rang. She looked through the peephole and saw Carla outside with a desperate expression. Laura, please open the door. We need to talk, Carla said, knocking lightly on the door. Laura hesitated but decided to face the situation once and for all. She opened the door but didn't invite Carla in. What do you want now? She asked, her voice firm and cold. Carla tried to enter, but Laura blocked the way. I just want to talk to you. Please, let me in. Laura shook her head. No, Carla, you have no right to show up here and invade my privacy. I've already said I don't want any more contact with you. Carla began to cry, but Laura wasn't moved. You're my daughter, Laura. I gave you life. How can you be so selfish? Laura's anger exploded. Selfish? Are you serious? Who kicked me out of the house? Who left me alone when I needed you the most? Now you come here and call me selfish? Carla tried to argue, but Laura cut her off. Enough, Carla. I don't owe you anything. You made your choices, and now you'll have to deal with the consequences. Carla, however, wasn't willing to give up. She tried to push Laura to enter the apartment, but Laura stood her ground. Get out of here, Carla. I'm not giving you money, and if you don't leave, I'm calling the police. The threat seemed to work, but only for a moment. Carla, in a fit of rage, tried to grab Laura, but she dodged. You're not going to ignore me, Carla shouted, lunging at Laura. Laura, frightened, pushed Carla away and ran to grab the phone. I'm calling the police, she shouted, dialing the emergency number. Carla, realizing the situation was spiraling out of control, tried to flee, but Laura held her until the police arrived. When the officers showed up, Laura explained the situation and showed the messages and emails Carla had sent. She's been harassing me and invading my privacy. I need a restraining order. The police arrested Carla for trespassing and assault, and Laura was advised to seek a permanent restraining order. That night, Laura called her grandparents to tell them what had happened. You did the right thing, sweetheart, Maria said, her voice filled with emotion. No one has the right to demand anything from you after everything you've been through. Laura knew her grandparents were right, but the situation still left her, emotionally drained. She sat on the couch, staring at the ceiling, and wondered if she would ever be able to forgive Carla. Maybe one day, she thought. But not today. The day after the confrontation with Carla was a whirlwind of emotions for Laura. She woke up with a heavy heart, but also with a sense of relief for having taken a firm stand. Still, the process of obtaining a permanent restraining order wouldn't be easy, and she knew she needed to prepare for what was to come. Laura spent the morning gathering all the evidence she had against Carla. The emails, text messages, voicemails, and the police report from the previous night. She also called a lawyer, who advised her on the next steps. "You have a strong case," the lawyer said. "With all this evidence, the restraining order should be granted without any issues." While preparing for the legal battle, Laura also had to deal with the emotional aftermath of what had happened. She felt torn between anger for everything Carla had done and a deep sadness for having to reach this point with her own mother. "I didn't want it to be like this," she thought, looking at an old photo of Carla and her, taken when they were still a united family. But Laura knew she couldn't afford to falter. She had fought too hard to build the life she had now, and she wasn't going to let Carla destroy it. "I deserve peace," she told herself, putting the photo away in a drawer. It was time to move forward. The process to obtain the restraining order was faster than Laura expected. Within weeks, she was standing before a judge, presenting her evidence and explaining the situation. Carla was also there, but this time, she seemed less confident. When the judge granted the restraining order, Laura felt a huge weight lifted off her shoulders. "Finally, I'm free," she thought, walking out of the courtroom. But the victory in court didn't mean the end of the consequences. Carla, now prohibited from approaching Laura, began spreading lies about her to the rest of the family. "Laura is abandoning me," Carla told her grandparents and other relatives. "She doesn't care about family." Laura found out about the gossip through Maria, who warned her about what was happening. "She's trying to turn the family against you," Maria said, her voice filled with concern. "But your grandfather and I know the truth, and we're on your side." Despite her grandparents' support, Laura felt a deep pain, knowing that some relatives were believing Carla's lies. "I can't control what others think," she told herself, trying to convince herself that she didn't need anyone's approval. But the rejection still hurt. To make matters worse, Carla began sending indirect messages through distant relatives. "Your mother is going through a tough time," an aunt said during a phone call. "Couldn't you forgive her and help a little?" Laura responded firmly. "I have nothing more to say to Carla. And if she's going through a tough time, she'll have to deal with the consequences of her own choices." Gradually, Laura began distancing herself from those who didn't support her. She knew she needed to protect her peace and couldn't allow toxic people to remain part of her life. "I deserve to be happy," she thought, blocking another phone number. With time, the dust began to settle. Laura focused on her work, her friends, and building a life that made her happy. She knew the scars from the past would never completely disappear, but she also knew she was in control of her own destiny. "I'm stronger than I thought," she thought, looking at the horizon, ready to move forward. With the restraining order in place and the physical and emotional distance from Carla, Laura finally began to breathe easier. For the first time in years, she felt in control of her own life. But although the worst was over, she knew there was still work to do to heal the wounds of the past and build a future that would truly make her happy. Laura decided to invest in herself. She started attending therapy, something she had always wanted to do but never had the time or resources for. The sessions were difficult at first, as she had to relive painful memories and confront feelings she had buried long ago. But little by little, she began to understand that she wasn't to blame for Carla's abandonment and that she deserved to be happy, regardless of what had happened in the past. "You can't change what happened, but you can choose how it will affect your future," the therapist said during one session. Laura took those words to heart and began to allow herself to dream again. She enrolled in a graduate program, something she had always wanted to do but never had the courage to try. "It's time to invest in myself," she thought, filling out the application form. At work, Laura continued to excel. Her dedication and resilience were recognized, and she was promoted to project manager. The salary increase was welcome, but what made her happiest was the sense of accomplishment. "I'm building a career I can be proud of," she thought, signing the promotion contract. But not everything was easy. There were still days when Laura felt overwhelmed by memories of the past. On one of those nights, she dreamed of Carla. In the dream, Carla was smiling and saying, "I've always loved you, Laura. Please forgive me." Laura woke up with a racing heart and tears in her eyes. "I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive her," she admitted to herself. But this time, the pain didn't paralyze her. Instead, she used that emotion as a reminder of how much she had grown and strengthened. Laura also began to rebuild her social life. She reconnected with friends she had distanced herself from during the difficult years and even started going on a few dates. "I deserve to be happy and to have people who value me," she thought, laughing with a friend at a cafe. Gradually, she allowed herself to trust again and open her heart to new possibilities. One of the most significant moments of this new phase was when Laura decided to travel alone. She had always been afraid of traveling without company, but now she felt ready to face that challenge. She chose a quiet destination, a beach in the Northeast, and spent a week relaxing, reflecting, and reconnecting with herself. "I'm finally living for me," she thought, watching the sunset. When she returned from the trip, Laura realized she had reached a level of peace she had never thought possible. She still thought about Carla from time to time, but the pain wasn't as intense. "I can't change the past, but I can choose how I'll live my future," she repeated to herself, like a mantra. At the end of the year, Laura organized a small celebration at her apartment to commemorate her achievements. She invited her grandparents, a few close friends, and even some co-workers. It was a night full of laughter, stories, and gratitude. "I wouldn't be here without your support," she said, raising a toast. "And I promise that, from now on, I'll keep living the life I deserve." As she looked at the people around her, Laura felt a deep sense of gratitude. She knew there were still challenges ahead, but she also knew she was ready to face them. "I'm stronger than I thought," she thought, hugging Maria. "And the best is yet to come." Laura's journey is a powerful portrayal of resilience, overcoming adversity, and self-discovery. Her story shows us that even in the face of abandonment, betrayal, and manipulation, it's possible to rebuild a life full of meaning and peace. Laura faced challenges that many of us can relate to, such as the struggle for independence, the search for acceptance, and the need to set boundaries in toxic relationships. What's most impressive is her ability to turn pain into strength, using adversity as stepping stones to achieve her dreams. The narrative also touches on universal themes, such as forgiveness, the importance of therapy, and the value of surrounding yourself with supportive people. Laura teaches us that while the past may shape us, it doesn't have to define us. She chose to focus on the future, investing in herself and building a life that makes her happy. Her story is a reminder that we all deserve peace, self-love, and the chance to start over. What did you think of Laura's journey? Could you relate to any part of her story? Maybe you've faced similar situations, like dealing with toxic relationships, seeking emotional or financial independence, or even learning to forgive, or not forgive, someone who deeply hurt you. Leave a comment below about what stood out to you the most. Was it Laura's resilience, how she handled her mother's manipulation, or maybe the moment she decided to invest in herself and move forward? Share your thoughts and experiences. After all, stories like Laura's remind us that we're not alone and that, together, we can find strength and inspiration to face our own challenges. And if you're going through something similar, remember, you're capable of overcoming it too. Just like Laura, you deserve peace, happiness, and a bright future. Don't be afraid to seek help, set boundaries, and prioritize your well-being. Your life is yours, and you have the power to write the next chapter of your story. I hope this story touched your heart and inspired you in some way. If you enjoyed it, share it with someone who might also benefit from this message of hope and resilience. And don't forget to leave your comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts.